Boom! Vodney Cleveland is the Texas Longhorn. That's a strong hook 'em there, Jeff Howe. Vodney Cleveland, defensive lineman out of Birmingham's Parker High School in Birmingham, Alabama, has committed to the Longhorns over Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama, Auburn, you name it. He's a Longhorn. Vodney Cleveland, about 6'2", 305 right now. Jeff, we look at film of Vodney Cleveland here, and he is absolutely one of the more impressive defensive line prospects in the Deep South, highly ranked guy. Tell us what you see here out of the newest Longhorn, Vodney Cleveland.
Violent, Bobby. That's the first word that comes to mind. And, different than, Dylan Berryman, like we know what he's going to be for Texas, right? Over the ball, like a guy that's going to be a linebacker's best friend. Corey Wells, a little more of I don't want to say a project, but a guy that might be in the oven a little longer. Vodney Cleveland's one of those guys that's probably going to have a chance to play early at Texas. And again, we talk about this defensive line class. We'll get to the overall class here in a little bit, but this is a class where Kenny Baker, Sark, PK, they can ensure that it's going to be a while before we got to go into the portal and get, 6 defensive linemen to feel good about the rotation. You throw in the guys they got last year, especially Myron Charles and Josiah Sharma with this group as we watch. Vodney Cleveland's going to get to KJ Lacey right here in the state championship game.
Is that what that is?
Yeah. But yeah, this is a class, Bobby, where they reload the defensive line. So like we talk about the offensive line, just really good to see Kenny Baker and company get another piece, knowing they've still got a couple really big fish out there on the board.
Yeah, they really do. They have a couple in this weekend. As a matter of fact, Kendall Gerville and James Johnson, both from the state of Florida, are in. This gives Texas 3 defensive line commitments, adds to, you mentioned Corey Wells out of Petal, Mississippi, as well as Dylan Berryman, a big nose tackle type out of Monroe's Ouachita High School, Ouachita Paris in Monroe, Louisiana. I look at this and what we're seeing here now, this gives Texas 14 commitments overall. They're in the midst, I think, of having 18 players on campus this weekend. Several of them have already committed previously or prior to their visit. There are a couple of guys out there that we think are have given the okay, but we'll wait and let them have their own moment, et cetera, in time whenever they decide to do that. They have various commitment dates. But this commitment's big because I agree with Jeff. I mean, Texas has had to go too much to the portal the last 2 years, not just this year with Murad Watson, Travis Shaw, Hero Canoe, those guys, but also a year ago with Bill Norton, Jermaine Lole, Tia Savea, all of those guys. Texas now trying to get more in the high school range. And I would add this as it relates to Vodney Cleveland. He will unlikely be the last defensive tackle Texas takes. We think they could go 4, even 5 potentially. Damari Simeon is also out there, young man out of New Jersey that Texas likes a lot as well. Lamar Brown, big guy out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, still on the hook, although he's visiting LSU this weekend. A lot of stuff out there still to go. We're going to take a couple of y'all's questions here today as we watch as we watch Vodney Cleveland and take a look at the overall D-line class. Jeff, you have anything here that you like that Texas is doing? Is there a, for me, the trend for there he is getting KJ Lacey again. The trend for him, and for this, is their need and desire to go into the Deep South on the defensive side of the ball in particular. This seems to be something they've decided they're just going to do as a collective group here at the University of Texas from a coaching perspective.
This goes back to the conversation, Bobby. I've had it on a lot of the different programs on our platform. Is out-of-state recruiting versus in-state recruiting. Do you pay too much attention to out-of-state to worry about, are you neglecting your backyard? I think defensive line is one of those positions where this is why you recruit nationally. This is why you go out of state. And this is why you recruit within the SEC footprint. Think back a couple cycles ago when Tom Herman's at Texas and Texas is recruiting almost exclusively in-state kids. If you lose a kid like DeMarvin Leal, you had no fallback plan. You just had to go with a kid that either was a complete project at that point, at least some of it wasn't anywhere in the stratosphere with them really out. Texas at this point, Bobby, they're going to miss out on some quality defensive linemen. But you look at what they've got, and even if Vodney Cleveland had gone somewhere else, like you said, Kendall Gurville is on the board and is on a visit this weekend. James Johnson is available and is on a visit this weekend. So you get I love the term, CJ has shots on goal. You get a lot of shots on goal. That's what Kenny Baker's done with this D line group, using his contacts in the state of Georgia. And and throughout the Southeast, I go back to something Sark said at the Touchdown Club at Houston luncheon. This would have been in late May. He was talking about the recruiting in the SEC. He said, everybody talked about recruiting in the SEC like it was going to be some kind of adjustment for Texas. He said, we looked at it as advantageous for us because we can get on I-20 and I-10 in the state out of the two major metro areas and just work our way east. And now that Texas is in the conference, kids from Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, now they have a reason to want to either come to Texas or take a closer look at Texas. So this is not the last you'll see Texas do this. And Bobby, you've been doing this a heck of a lot longer than I have, longer than a lot of people have. There's something about the big athletic human in the southeast part of the United States. They just don't grow those type people anywhere else.
Well, I tell you what, it's also the concentration level there too. I mean, it's all around the southern deep south. And I will say this, it's not that there aren't great players in the state of Texas. Jamion Winfield is a great defensive tackle up in Richardson, but he's headed to USC. What I like about it is exactly what you said. It gives Texas an out. You're not entirely reliant just on the state of Texas. I think back to when I was first starting doing this 25, 30 years ago. Florida State was the apple of everyone's eye. They did as good a job as anyone. Well, you know what? There was one year where they signed 3 offensive linemen just from the state of Texas. And so even a team that's at the top of their game, having that outreach elsewhere allows them more margin for error, I think, and gets Texas into that. Hey, I want to ask you this and show you this now next. This gives you an idea. Texas at 3 commitments now on the defensive line, Jeff. And I'm looking at Berryman, Wells, and Cleveland. The 2 guys that are on campus right now, James Johnson and Kendall Gurville, both out of South Florida. Damari Simeon out of New Jersey. Lamar Brown. Look, if Texas can get, 4 to 5 of these guys, is that about as good a defensive line class as Texas has ever had? I mean, seriously, they had a great D-line class last year, but this might be, from an interior perspective and just sheer numbers, it could be rarefied air Texas is tinkering with.
It would be a lot like that 2022 offensive line class, Bobby, when you brought in, Kelvin Banks and DJ Campbell and Neto, Cole Hudson, that whole group. Now, do you have like a 5-star, top 25-ish type guy headliner among this group? Maybe, maybe not, but to me, it doesn't matter. I'll tell you what's intriguing for me, though, is like where Texas sits with Kendall Gurville. They've done a really good job in that recruitment. The way Jerry and CJ, the way gathering all our intel, what we keep hearing about Damari Simeon, that one is really interesting. Bobby, the fact that Texas is just in it and has a pretty decent shot at landing him. And then I think if you just get one more, then, at that point, you're almost playing with house money if you got 4. And then, hey, whether it's James Johnson, Lamar Brown, Damari Simeon, you had one more than that. I mean, you signed 5 in this class, then you're cooking with peanut oil at that point.
Peanut oil. Hot grease, Jeff. Hot grease. Hey, go ahead. Finish up.
I was gonna say took the daughter to Chick-fil-A for dinner last night. So I know they do their fries and peanut oil, so I got peanut oil. Right? But I mean, it's kind of a watershed class for Kenny Baker, like I said, where you can really, especially for a staff, Bobby, the portal's great. Don't get me wrong. Texas has done really well recruiting in the portal, but let's not forget this is the developmental staff that really wants to, do grassroots, especially along the lines of scrimmage. And we've seen it. They haven't. Kyle Flood hasn't cut corners on the offensive line. They've had to rely on the portal, I think, more than they want to on the interior defensive line. But again, I'll say it again, this is a class where you can set yourself up for the foreseeable future on the interior.
Let's go to the chat line real quick. I want to mention this because Patrick Page comments quite a lot, and I agree with him on this. And we need to give him his flowers, so to speak, Jeff. Look at Kenny Baker, Texas defensive line coach. Most of y'all were sleeping on him last year. I don't know. I will say this, Patrick. I don't know, and I ask you, Jeff, I don't know that people were sleeping. They just didn't know what to think. He was a relatively unheralded coach, at least from a recruiting perspective. Had only been at Western Kentucky prior to going to the Miami Dolphins. But here we are, fast forward 12 months later, and to Patrick Page's point, look at Kenny Baker. Pretty solid recruiting effort for the second-year D-line coach at the University of Texas.
I think maybe the most underrated attribute Steve Sarkisian has as a head coach, based on what he's done at Texas to this point, is his ability to continue to hire really good football coaches. Even if, I'm not saying Texas is Alabama under Nick Saban right now, even though we'd love to see Texas put together a run, and certainly the conditions are getting ripe for Texas to be in the mix for the foreseeable future. But you listen to Nick Saban, Bobby, talk about the end at Alabama, and one of the things he talks about why he felt it was falling off and why his last year he felt like was a challenge was it's really hard to continually lose really good football coaches and replace them with really good football coaches. But Sark is at a point now, assistant coaches, they want to come to Texas because they see that next step, whether it's getting a coordinator job, a head coaching job, going to the NFL. All of Sark's assistants, they've done all of that. They've gone to be position coaches in the NFL or college head coaches or college coordinators. So Texas, we talk about it being an attractive stop for recruits. It's an attractive stop for assistant coaches. And not just Kenny Baker, but, Chris Jackson didn't have, a proven track record when he got to Texas. I think he's done pretty well as a receivers coach at Texas. And, Mark Orfe, Kenoto Hudson, Sark's given some young and or inexperienced assistant coaches a chance to prove themselves. So I say that to say this, Bobby, if you're down on Chad Scott as a running backs coach, given the way running back recruiting is going, rewind to last year, how everybody thought about Kenny Baker, and look at where Texas is now recruiting the interior defensive line.
Guillermo Cardenas says, let's go. Hook 'em horns. Hook 'em, Guillermo. Thanks for the super chat. And Jeff, you just mentioned running back recruiting. So let's talk a little bit about this here as we have a special episode because Vodney Cleveland is committed to the University of Texas defensive tackle. Let's talk a little bit about those running backs, though. Bobby and Jeff, any updates on running back recruiting, or is Texas waiting till the season starts? Xavier Crowell, the young man out of Jackson, Alabama, is on campus at Alabama this weekend. There's a picture out there of him meeting with Nick Saban, although Nick Saban is no longer the coach at Alabama. So I don't know what that does for him. But Xavier Crowell is expected to announce roughly a week from Thursday. So this coming Thursday, the 26th of June, he's expected to announce his decision. Texas and Alabama are thought to be the two favorites there. But outside of that, we don't know if Texas is going to get another official visit even from a running back. Did not end up where it wanted to be, especially with KJ Edwards out of Carthage opting for the Aggies earlier this week. Jeff, your thoughts on where Texas goes? We have heard they've reached out a little bit to some existing players in state, but no offers or anything like that out to any of them at this point.
I don't know if it's the challenging part of it or if it's actually maybe a good thing that the dead period is coming up, because depending on what Xavier Crowell does, if you get him, obviously, hey, all the woes about running back recruiting are gone at that point, and you got your guy. Even if you miss him, it's a really good line of demarcation going into the dead period to just kind of reset, take stock of your board, and just start doing some evaluations on guys. And this is where your contacts in state, out of state, that's where they're really going to come in handy working the board. There, to me, Bobby, there's no rush to just go get a guy. They've got time where they can evaluate and go find someone that really fits what they want. So I don't expect this staff to panic. They haven't done it in situations like this before, but I think from that standpoint, it might be a good thing that we're coming up on the dead period where they actually are forced to kind of take a step back and reevaluate everything.
Hey, Jeff, let's go back to that graphic that we had a little bit earlier. I believe it's Matt, can you pull that graphic up one more time? I'm looking at it right now, and I'm getting questions here that I think are germane to this graphic. Number one is Joseph Curtis asks, if you could choose one or two DL for Texas to take, do you have favorites? So one to more, two defensive linemen. And then also, here's one from Corey Gustafson. Are we not pursuing Jamarian Carlton anymore? Let me get the Carlton answer out first, and then, Jeff, I'll let you take the prior one. Carlton is a defensive end, so he's not included on this list. Carlton is visiting Baylor this weekend, young man out of Temple. So these are not defensive ends on this list. They are strictly interior defensive linemen. Some of them may also play defensive end at times, but they're primarily interior big defensive linemen. Jeff, do you have a favorite or two on the defensive line here, or do you think that they're all good enough and Texas needs to figure out how they can get as many as they can in the bucket?
I think that answer, Bobby, is probably the answer that suffices, but maybe just because I've watched more of him, because Texas has been in a stronger position with him longer, I'd say Kendall Graville. And then at that point, I think you're good with 4. And if you just want to go big game hunting at that point, Lamar Brown's recruitment is going to be one of those that goes right up until the 11th hour anyway. So, hey, at that point, you can just kind of push all your remaining chips to the middle of the table and go for a guy that, I look at him, I've said kind of reminds me of another Louisiana kid. Reminds me a little bit of Jerry Tillery coming out of Shreveport went to Notre Dame, was a first-round pick. So that's what I would do, Bobby, in my hypothetical world. Get Kendall Graville and then, hang in that Lamar Brown recruitment either till you get him or he signs somewhere else.
James Johnson's pretty darn good too. The one that I think is underrated in that group that I really, really like is Damari Simeon.
Yeah.
He 6'2"-ish, 290, quick as a cat. I think, he canceled his Ohio State visit this weekend after visiting Texas.
Yeah.
He is highly wanted and desired across the board. So I would put maybe Damari and Simeon in there in that group as well, Jeff. So it is looking like a banner recruiting class at defensive tackle for the University of Texas. All right, one more question, and then we'll get going here for this special edition of On Texas Football. Space City Wrangler says, how many highs do we have remaining? 3 or 4? Well, I will be honest. One of them is off the board as of today. We kind of knew that Vodney Cleveland was going the Longhorns' way. So I believe, and I'll have to check with Jerry on this, but I think it's 3, including 2 that came in over that have come in that we know about in the, I guess, last 24, 48 hours at this point. That's the number. All right. Before I let you go, one last thing. Vodney Cleveland commits to Texas out of Birmingham, Alabama. Parker, defensive tackle, 6'2", 305, 310. A couple of notes. He is the 14th commitment for the Longhorns, the 3rd defensive lineman. Texas now has 14 commits total. 11 of those are what I call position players, so not a kicker, punter, or a deep snapper. So 11 of them. And of those 11, Jeff, to talk about in-state, out-of-state, 5 are from out-of-state, 6 from in-state. Pretty equal weighting for the Texas Longhorns this year. All right, Jeff, you have anything you want to add before we get going here?
I'll just reiterate about the in-state, out-of-state. You can look last year, and I know we made a big deal about it. It was a big deal. You miss out on a guy like DeCorian Moore. I mean, you look at some of the top-end guys in the state went elsewhere. But if you look at kind of like in an industry-wide ranking, kind of numbers 5 through 8, that's Jonah Williams and Kalik Lockett. So if Texas signs the kind of class, Bobby, that they need to lock up to continue on a path toward competing for a national championship, I wouldn't worry about any of it, folks. All that stuff will even out in the end. You'll end up with some really good players from the state of Texas, but you also end up with some out of state that can help you win a championship too.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it. Thanks to Jeff Howe. Thanks also to our producer, Matt Hutchison. For Jeff and Matt and all of you, hope you guys are having a good weekend. Longhorns still have 18 recruits on campus. We'll have more for you either tonight or tomorrow as the situation warrants. For you guys have a good weekend. Hook 'em horns. And one last thing to Vodney Cleveland. Hook 'em, buddy.